What's good, fight fans? Welcome back to another episode of Combat and Kick It. It's your boy Bando. Listen, man, UFC Orlando was this past weekend, and it was a phenomenal card from top to bottom, from the prelims all the way up. What I want to talk about mainly, though, is Wonderboy. Everybody thought Wonderboy going into this fight, man, he's 40 years old, he ain't got it no more. You saw his last few fights, he ain't got it, he's washed. In my opinion, obviously, the last two fights that he was in were against two dominant ground fighters. You had one dominant wrestler and you had one dominant jiu-jitsu guy, and both strong as hell when it comes to that. And they used what they were best at, and they weren't going to strike. Who wants to stand there and strike with Wonderboy? That's a death wish. So those guys used their best abilities, and they got the job done. So you really can't take nothing away from Wonderboy. He fought two of the best guys in the top of the division, and they just happen to be ground specialists. And in Wonderboy's defense, it was terrible matchmaking anyways. I don't really see Wonderboy shooting himself up back to a welterweight championship fight or anything like that. Maybe it's kind of interesting if Leon stays champion because you have a striker in the division staying champion, but that top five is all ground specialists. You got Usman, you got Bilal, you got Gilbert, you got Colby, you got Hamzat, and then they want to give him guys like Shavkat in the top 10. Shavkat's another ground specialist, but also very good on the striking end. It's just a lot of tough matchups for Wonderboy, and this Kevin Holland matchup was a perfect matchup because, one, exciting fighter, big name, you know he's going to make it fun no matter what. Anytime Kevin Holland's in there, and as you can see, anytime Kevin Holland's in there with another striker, it's going to be an exciting fight. We don't want to see these guys that are really good strikers get wrestled the whole time. Now, I understand the game. It's mixed martial arts. Each part of the game you got to be prepared for, right? But in certain times, in certain moments with two guys like that, you want to see them stand and bang, and that's what we got. And although Kevin Holland broke his hand, and some say it was in the first round on a shot that he landed on Wonderboy. Some say it was later in the fight when Wonderboy kicked him and he blocked it. Either way, he fought that whole fight very, very strong. You can see that Kevin Holland's got a fucking chin of steel. You can't argue that. It honestly looked like the man came out of that fight almost unscathed besides the hand, and Wonderboy looked like he went to war. And they really did kind of go to war. If they ran that fight back, I guarantee you a lot of fans would be sitting in front of their TV screens to watch it again. So, UFC 282 is this weekend. Fantastic matchups on this card. Unfortunately, not the card of the start that we really wanted. We had Yuri versus Glover 2, which was going to be such a good matchup. We already saw how good the first one was, so a lot of people were excited for that fight. Unfortunately, we're not getting it. And for those who don't know why, Yuri had to pull out due to a very, very bad shoulder injury, and he relinquished the title because it seems like he's going to be out either 6 months to a year. So, with that being said, the UFC offered Glover Teixeira, Magomed Ankalaev to fight for the vacant light heavyweight championship. Glover said no. He said for a guy like Magomed Ankalaev, you need much more time to prepare. Understandably so. So, Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz, the original co-main event, now moved to main event, is for the vacant light heavyweight championship. So you got the former champion going up against what probably would have been number one contender if you know, regardless of situation, I think Magomed Ankalaev pretty much earned that spot of being number one contender. But you got this matchup now is for the vacant light heavyweight championship, and it's interesting. It could be a really, really good fight. Before it was, you know, an exciting fight, an exciting matchup because you got two top contenders. Now you have two top contenders fighting for something that they did not expect to be fighting for. So this gives them so much more behind everything. This probably has so much more hype for them, so much more motivation. It's going to create one exciting fight, in my opinion. And I think the card is going to be exciting. Now, there's been a couple pullouts, couple issues with the card. So, like I said, it's not the exact card that we were expecting. We expected Robbie Lawler on this card. Robbie Lawler, unfortunately, pulled out for his fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio. And filling in for him is Alex Morono, which, that's a game fighter. It could be a very, very entertaining fight. Who knows? I guess we just have to wait and see, right? But the main card is a pretty stacked card. You got it opening with Bryce Mitchell versus Ilia Topuria. You got Darren Till's return versus Dricus du Plessis. Like I said, Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Alex Morono. You got the co-main event, Paddy Pimblett versus Jared Gordon. And the main event, Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev for the light heavyweight championship. Now, the fight that stands out the most to me on this card is the one opening the card. In my opinion, this should be much higher up. You have two top contenders. Very, very skilled Bryce Mitchell versus a very, very powerful Ilia Topuria. I like this matchup because everybody knows styles make fights, right? And Bryce Mitchell has such a style that is exciting to watch, and he uses his IQ to the best of his ability when he's in there. Excuse me. He uses it to the best of his ability when he's in there. He really does. Against Edson Barbosa, he saw that he wasn't going to stand there and strike with one of the best strikers in the game. You know, he took a couple shots, and he did give a couple back, but he wrestled. He used his wrestling and mixing it up to win that fight. I think if he does the same and mixes it up properly in this fight, he could win. Ilia Topuria is one powerful puncher, one powerful fighter, and very skilled too, very technical. So the matchup is beautiful. But I think that overall, Bryce Mitchell has fought a little bit tougher of opponents than Ilia Topuria has been in bigger fights than Ilia has. I think is much hungrier. Not to say that Ilia's not hungry for the same thing, but Bryce has been working for that top position to get into the top 5, to stay in the top 5, to become a champion. I don't think he's really going to let anything get snatched away from him. Now, in the same token, Ilia Topuria, like I said, I'm not saying that he's not going to be that hungry, but Ilia Topuria is a beast. So he's not going to come out there and just let Bryce Mitchell come out and walk all over him, take him down, and do all that. I think it's going to be a very, very, very competitive fight. And like I said, who knows? If Ilia Topuria lands, the man has a pack in he packs a punch, man. He's got some power in his hands. Real dynamite. So if Bryce can avoid that and, like I said, mix up his game, he has a better chance of winning. But if Ilia can get to him early, hurt him in the first round, could be a long night for Bryce Mitchell. Another fight that's really good, obviously, the next fight, Darren Till versus Dricus du Plessis. I don't really know how this fight's going to go, right? We've only seen a few fights from Dricus du Plessis in the UFC. The last few fights of Darren Till's in the UFC weren't the best, but at the same time, he's the only guy that has given Rob Whittaker problems besides Israel Adesanya. He gave Rob real problems. No other guy recently has. Beat up Kelvin pretty good. You know, so he's had some good fights, but hasn't had the greatest fights, and definitely was coming in with a lot of hype to a lot of his fights that he didn't live up to. Now, this is something that the UFC, in my opinion, they screwed up on. This is the UFC's fault, where they pushed him way too soon, and they pushed him way too quick with the Tyron Woodley fight. They pushed him and threw him right in against the Wolves. You know, you had one win off of Cowboy Cerrone and a very, very slow, boring decision against Wonderboy in London. Just wasn't that good to lead him into that fight. And unfortunately got thrown to the Wolves. And Tyron Woodley, before Tyron Woodley hit his slant down, took Darren Till with him, I guess. So he took Darren Till out, and Darren hasn't really been the exact same since. Now, I really hope that he can come out with that intent to kill, that same mindset that he had against Cowboy, like, oh, I'm going to hurt you. I don't care how good you are, the legend you are, none of that. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to come in here for the finish. Now, with the Dricus du Plessis, he's got a young up-and-comer, strong, fast, and very big. So it makes for an interesting matchup, and Darren, in my opinion, cannot lose this fight. Dricus could lose this fight. He's fine. He's good. He could lose this fight and 2 more fights after this. He'll be fine. Darren loses this fight, the man's on the line for the UFC at that point. You know, some people might disagree with me, but that's just how I feel. I think Darren would be on the line of possibly getting cut. And I definitely don't want to see Darren Till on that level. I want to see Darren get a win. And I don't want to see Darren get this win and be out for another 2 years due to an injury or something like that. So I hope he gets this win. I'm rooting for him. I didn't give my prediction for the last fight, so let me give that real quick. My prediction is Bryce Mitchell. Most likely by decision. So I'm going Bryce Mitchell by decision. And I'm going Darren Till by a second round TKO. I think my man's going to come out smart. He's going to come out technical. He's going to use his striking to his advantage. And I think we're going to see more filled holes in his game. A lot of the holes that we've seen before, I don't think they're going to be there for Darren Till. I think you're going to see a more complete fighter, a much more skilled fighter, and a better balanced all-around fighter. So I'm going with Darren Till with a second round TKO. On to Santiago Ponzinibbio and Alex Morono. I really don't have a huge prediction for this. I was thinking Santiago was definitely going to beat Robbie Lawler. You know, you got to go with you're only as good as your last fight. And Robbie is actually looking to that point of you know, he could retire. I mean, like everybody says, no one tells another person when to retire, but he could if he wanted to. You know what I'm saying? He did what he wanted. He did what he needed to do in the UFC. He got the championship. He's been fighting exciting fights for years. He's been taking a lot of damage for years. He really doesn't need to continue fighting. So a lot of people expected this fight, if he would have won, that he would have took this win and run off into the sunset with a retirement. So I would have had Santiago going into that fight anyways. I'm going to keep my prediction with Santiago, probably through a decision, just because it's short notice for Alex Morono. I think Alex Morono is a beast, though. I mean, we saw what he did to Cowboy, and he did it with ease. So he's definitely no bitch. He's a game fighter. He's strong, very durable. Makes for an interesting matchup if it's on, you know, normal 6 weeks and not 6 days. So shout out to Alex Morono for stepping. I almost this close every single time to saying Moreno. I'm a big Brandon Moreno fan. I'm this close every single time I say it. But Alex Morono, big props for him stepping up and taking the fight on 6 days' notice. And like I said, if this was a fight that happened on 6 weeks, it'd be a super exciting fight. But I'm going to have to stick with my prediction with Santiago Ponzinibbio. And probably just through a decision. Probably is a decision. Not to count Alex Morono out. Like I said, if it was 6 weeks training, he was actually training for Ponzinibbio the whole time and stuff like that. And he had the time to cut weight, everything like that. I think he'd have a better chance, but I'm going with Santiago. On to the co-main, you got Paddy Pimblett and Jared Gordon. Now, I want Paddy Pimblett to win this one. I really do. But Jared Gordon's no slouch, man. Jared Gordon is strong. He's good on the ground. He's got good grappling skills. He's got good wrestling. So he's got good clinching, honestly, up against the cage, too, when he needs to use it. He's strong. So it's a tough fight for Paddy, to be honest with you. It's one of those first tests. It's not a huge test, but it's a test. So we can really see what's up with Paddy Pimblett. A lot of people still think he's the hype train. You know, I personally don't think he's a hype train. I think he truly does have good skill. Am I thinking this guy's going to be an undefeated prospect forever in the UFC? No, but I do think that he is very skilled, and we'll see him bouncing around in the top 5 eventually. Like I said, I want to see him win this fight, but I do actually think this is one that he's going to lose. I think it's very similar to what happened with Molly McCann coming over to the States. Even with the hype behind her, you know, the States were cheering for her, even when, you know, you're fighting an American. The Americans really don't care when it comes to that kind of stuff. We don't sit back and get behind every single athlete. Jared Gordon actually says that in one of the interviews that I was watching today, that we don't always really back our athletes like that. There's so many different athletes, so many different states and everything like that. It's tough to really back everyone. With these people, they have a whole country, you know, like Paddy's got the entire bit of Liverpool, if not all of the UK behind him for this fight. Same with Molly McCann when she fights. Probably same with Darren Till. Conor McGregor has Ireland. You got Khabib with Russia. You got these countries that back their fighters. But I think, I don't know, I just have one of them feelings, you know, 2022 has been a very upset year when it comes to the the favorites. A lot of people have expected a lot of favorites to win, and unfortunately did not get the win. And I think for Paddy Pimblett, this is going to be one of them situations. Like I said, I want Paddy to win, but I'm going Jared Gordon, and I'm going Jared Gordon with a finish. I'm not exactly sure what kind of finish, but I'm going Jared Gordon with a finish. On to the main event, you got Jan Blachowicz versus Magomed Ankalaev, and I'm going with Magomed Ankalaev in this one. Psych! I'm going with the legendary Polish power. Let's go, Jan Blachowicz. No offense to Magomed Ankalaev, but I really do want to see this man get the belt back. It was an unfortunate way to see him lose. It was cool that it was Glover, and Glover being in his mid-40s, kind of at the end of his career, getting the belt. It was amazing, but I don't think that the Jan Blachowicz, whatever you want to say, however you say his name, it don't freaking matter. The Jan that we saw in that fight was not the Jan that we saw in 4, 5, 6 fights prior. I think he's a much more skilled, technical animal in there than he was that night. I think if we see the same fighter that fought Dominic Reyes, it could be a long night for Magomed Ankalaev. But in the same sense, if Magomed Ankalaev does what I said Bryce Mitchell needs to do and mix it up, mix up the standing, mix up the wrestling. If he gets in trouble on the feet, power wrestle. You already know the man's from Dagestan. They got the natural backup of wrestling. It's natural backup that they can call into play anytime they need it. Even if it's not that Khabib or Islam style wrestling, he's got it in the back pocket if he needs it. I say use it. If he uses that, I think that could be key ways for him to get the victory. But I'm going with Jan Blachowicz for this one. I really do want to see him have the belt back on his waist. And I think him and Yuri's a very interesting fight. And even in a way, Jan winning this and not getting Yuri right away, maybe getting a Glover 2 fight, that's huge, and it probably sells. So I think we got a decent card. It's a decent enough card, right? And I'm not going to complain. At least we got something. Like I said, I really, really wanted to see Yuri Prochazka on that card. Unfortunately, he got injured, but we do have a couple bangers on the prelims as well. You got Chris Curtis versus Joaquin Buckley. You got Edmund Shabazian versus Dalka Lugiambala. I think that's how you say his name. I never know with the pronunciations. You got Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Chris Dawkins. You got the 17-year-old Raul Rosas Jr. versus Jay Perrin. That's an interesting fight, too. I'm curious to see how that kid's going to do. 17 years old, he's young. People are going to be expecting a lot from him. I'm not expecting a lot from him, man. He's 17 years old. If he doesn't get the win, oh well, he doesn't get the win. If he gets the win, that's fucking awesome. You know what I mean? So hopefully he can get the win and make some history at 17. That'd be pretty dope. But at the same time, he's getting rushed into this very fast, so if he did lose, it's not a big shocker, and it's not a big disappointment. The kid's young, probably got a very, very long career ahead of him. So that's UFC 282. Those are my predictions. Thank you, like I always say, thank you for sitting here and listening to me ramble. I just sit here and ramble because I like fights. I could ramble all day long. I know a lot of the times I probably sound like I don't know what I'm doing. It's the beginning of the podcast lifestyle. You're still trying to figure this shit out. But I appreciate you for listening. I just ask one more favor. Please like, subscribe, comment, share the link with your friend. Tell him, hey, go listen to this dumbass bamble about some freaking fighting. How about that? Cool? Appreciate it. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next episode. Peace.